Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at some writing exercises, specifically writing exercises that you can use if you're dealing with writer's block. We've made a few videos in the past on writer's block, looking at the different types and causes of writer's block, different strategies to get out of it. Today we're going to be looking at some really just objective writing exercises that you can try. These exercises are going to be split into two types. The first half are for dealing with writer's block related to your specific project if you feel like your book has just gotten stuck. These are some exercises that you can do to help unstick your book. The second half of the video will look at some writing exercises to help you if you just don't have any ideas. Writing exercises to help you brainstorm new concepts, new ideas, and write if you feel like your brain is just completely empty. Exercise number 1, point of view skip. Now, most of the time we're told not to head hop in writing, meaning that you should stay in the head of your point of view character or characters. But if you've gotten stuck on a scene, sometimes the way to unlock it is to try and write it from the perspective of another character. If you've been writing your entire book in first person up until this point, but you've gotten stuck, maybe the way to unlock it is to see it from a completely new angle and try writing it from the perspective of another character in the scene. Now, of course, later on, it probably won't make much sense to just have one scene in your book from a different point of view, so you'll probably want to rewrite it from your protagonist's point of view later. But it can be a really helpful way to unstick your book and help you pick up new nuances to the scene and just look at the scene literally from fresh eyes because you're seeing it from a completely new perspective. Exercise number 2, storyboard. If you can't get the words to flow, maybe you should try telling the story with pictures. You don't need to be a good artist for this. This is for your eyes only. You can draw just little scribbles with stick figures if you have to, but imagine that you're a director and that you're not writing a book, you're storyboarding a film. Get out a sheet of paper, fill it with little, about 2x2 squares, and imagine it like a movie. Draw out the scene shot by shot. This can be a completely new way to look at a scene because you're looking at it through pictures rather than words. And if you can get into the flow of the scene and block it out as a director would a film, you can use those visuals as an outline to write your actual scene later. It's a completely different way to visualize and outline a scene, and if the words are stuck, maybe you need to try telling it with something other than words. Number 3, looking back. Instead of writing the scene as a narrative scene, try writing it as a memory that your protagonist is writing down in a journal years later. Or say your book is already in past tense, so that feels very similar to the narrative form you're already using. Maybe you want to try recalling the scene in a letter from your protagonist to another character. This will give you a completely new way of seeing the scene because it completely changes the mode the scene is being told from. Rather than being told as narrative in your protagonist's mind, it's being written down physically, maybe even to another character. Especially if the scene has a heavy focus on character relationships, this can really help if you're taking the letter approach by writing the scene as a letter from one character to another character, because it shows you how the scene will impact them many years later and also give you new insight into the character relationships. This can also be a really helpful character development tool. You don't even have to use this exercise if you're stuck. You can also use it to develop your character or character relationships by writing letters from one character to another, maybe many years after the story has already passed. It helps you flesh out how the story impacts them, how they feel about the story after it's already ended, and helps you really unweave the character dynamics. The next exercise is the what if exercise. This is a very simple exercise, but it's also really effective. If you're stuck, you don't know where your story goes next, try setting a timer, maybe somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes, and just start writing out a list of what ifs. What if this happened? What if this happened? And start brainstorming as many possibilities for your plot as possible. The key with this exercise is not to stop writing. If you pause, you'll start overthinking them. It's best to just keep writing, even if some of the possibilities are ridiculous. You'll find that a lot of the time, you'll have to write out a lot of really ridiculous, really bad options in order to get to the brilliant ones. You'll find that you'll often start writing some pretty obvious options that aren't that helpful, and then they'll start to get more and more ridiculous, and then eventually something will click and you'll get to these really good, really original, really interesting what if scenarios for your plot you've never even considered before, but you have to get through all the bad ideas and all the obvious ideas first. So try not to stop writing. You have to get the ridiculous ideas out of the way sometimes before you can strike gold. But by the end, you should have a lot of options for possible plot points that you can use to keep developing your story. You can do this while writing if you're a pantser and you don't tend to outline in advance. You can also do this if you're just developing a new concept, to help brainstorm plot possibilities in the brainstorming or book development phase. The next exercise is to try diving deeper. If you feel like you can't progress with your story, instead of trying to move forward, try to dive deeper into a single moment. Pick a single moment from your story, maybe the point you're stuck at, and describe it in as much detail as possible. Describe everything in the character's surroundings. Describe the setting from all 5 senses from a 360-degree angle. Really dive into what the character is feeling, thinking. Describe that single moment in as much detail as possible. Of course, you're probably not going to use a lot of this in your book. A lot of it's going to be pointless, but it can be a way to help you unstick a scene by diving deeper and really getting to the root of what's going on in the scene and what's important in the scene that maybe you hadn't noticed before. And the final exercise to help you unstick your project is the therapy session. Put your protagonist in therapy. If they're the protagonist of a story, they probably have a lot of internal things that they can unpack. So let them unpack that. Write a transcript of their therapy session and you might learn some very interesting things about your character. Things that normally in a book wouldn't be said, would maybe be too overt. You wouldn't allow the character to state that explicitly. Well, this is the perfect situation and scenario for them to really unpack everything in their character. This can be a really great way to figure out things that normally in the piece would be left subtextual. You don't even really have to worry too much about what the imaginary therapist is saying. Instead, you want to focus more on your main character's dialogue and everything that they're saying. You might learn some very interesting things about your character by giving them the space to talk openly about their internal conflict and psyche. Alright, so those exercises are all great if you already have an idea and you're trying to unstick an existing project. But what about the other type of writer's block where you just have no ideas? You don't know what to write about. Here are a few little idea brainstorming prompts that you can use if you feel completely stuck and don't know what to write about. Number 1, the dictionary prompt. Get out a dictionary, open it to a random page, pick a word at random, close your eyes, just put your finger down on the page, and use that word as your prompt. Try writing a flash fiction piece about that word, maybe using it as the title or the first word or just the general topic of your piece. If you don't have a physical dictionary with you, most online dictionaries like dictionary.com have a word of the day. So you can even do this little prompt every single day with the daily dictionary.com word of the day. And since a lot of the time the word of the day is a bit obscure, it can also help you expand your vocabulary. Number 2, headlines. This is one of my personal favorite writing prompts. Find a newspaper headline and, without reading the article, write a story using the headline as a prompt. Then it can be interesting afterwards to go back and read the article and see any similarities or how completely different your piece is from the actual headline. They don't have to be recent headlines. Pick one that stands out to you, that feels interesting, that feels like there's a story there, and use that as your prompt. Number 3 is photographs. This is my number 1 favorite type of prompt, and it's to use a photograph as a prompt. This one never fails me. Anytime I don't know what to write, I go back to using photograph as prompt. I think because photographs are so visual, there's a feeling, there's emotion, there's atmosphere already in the image, they make such good writing prompts. Once again, just like with the headlines, using old archival photographs can also be a great option because a lot of the time they're more candid than something more staged. And so they can have that real genuine emotion in there. When you find a good photograph, asking yourself, what is the situation here? What are the emotions here? Who are these people? What's going on? What are they feeling? What do they feel about each other? So photographs can give you everything from imagery, atmosphere, to specific characters to work with. And in my opinion, it's just one of my favorite types of writing prompts is to use photographs. I actually keep a folder on my computer called writing prompts where I just save any photograph that I think would make a good writing prompt. And so then whenever I'm stuck and I feel like I just need a little bit of a writing prompt, I have no ideas, I open up my saved folder of photographs and I pick the one that kind of just calls to me in that moment. So this is one that you can kind of just start building a reservoir of good images that you want to use as prompts, and then when you need them, turn to them. The next exercise is playing with form. If you're stuck on what to write, try playing with new, more inventive forms of storytelling and focus on the form rather than the idea. This can help you break out of your block because it gives you a really specific challenge. Sometimes with completely wide open parameters, write whatever you want, it's harder to think of something. But with a narrower set of guidelines, it can actually be easier to come up with an idea because you have something guiding you and there's a specific challenge you have to work around. Well, one really specific challenge is to be given the form and create the story. Try writing a story that takes the form of a restaurant menu, or a telephone directory, or a tourism pamphlet, or an IKEA instruction manual. It sounds challenging, it is very, very challenging, but the challenge of finding a way to make it work can lead to really inventive writing, and can be a great way to break out of the block by challenging yourself with something really, really specific. And the final exercise is to change the genre. Write a short piece where you try writing one of your favorite stories, whether that's book, film, TV, whatever, in a completely different genre. Of course, you're probably going to be writing a condensed version. You don't want to spend too long on this or it's not really just an exercise, but just a couple pages where you rewrite a story in a completely different genre. For example, what if Lord of the Rings was a romantic comedy? It can be a really fun way to completely reimagine a story that you're very familiar with and that you have an emotional attachment to, but see it from a completely new angle that can actually lead to something really, really original. So those are some writing exercises to help break out of writer's block. If you have any writing exercises that you always turn to when you're stuck, I would love to hear about it in the comments. We also have a directory of writing exercises, so I'll leave a link to that if you're looking for more writing exercises or writing exercises that tackle different issues. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing videos every Friday on this channel. Until next time, bye!